And the first item on the agenda, additions, deletions, changes to the agenda? Any changes, Select Board?
Oh, my. There's a lot of things added, though, like in the last 2 hours.
Oh, those are really just documents, nothing else. No.
The next item on the agenda is Charlie Baker from the Chittenden County Regional Planning Commission. Will discuss their annual report, fiscal 17, and that was in our agenda packet, so part of the public packet. So you have to come up to the,
You get the guest of honor.
yeah, witness chair, I mean guest of honor desk.
There you go.
I'm thinking they probably could have heard me anyway, but, and I certainly don't need to take 30 minutes, so, yeah, no, thank you for having me on the agenda. So just every year, this time of year, try to check in with the town. The Regional Planning Commission is made up of the towns, so we work for you. Thank you for having Andrea as your appointee to our board. Active participation from Andrea, thank you. And then on the second page, there's a number of items of just specific things that we did with the town last fiscal year. From some, the Grants and Aid program is a new program with A&R, trying to give a little bit of money to help address some erosion problems. Excuse me. That's not really me for anybody watching at home. That's something with a speaker. So some additional money that we got is going through the RPCs to help towns with road erosion projects. Helping you with the bike ped grant, being the project manager for that. Safety analysis, better road stuff. Happy to answer any questions on those. The next couple pages, well, sorry, at the top of the next page are the 4 projects that you have in the capital program, including Bridge 24, sidewalks on the north side of the village and south side of the village, and 116 CVU improvements, which is scheduled for construction. We'll see, it looks like they will. FY 2018 is this fiscal year, so it doesn't get any sooner than that.
Actually starting to do work on it. So,
So they're getting ready.
yeah. Did you have some, Mike?
Well, can you go back to the other page? I was gonna ask maybe come up with some examples of how he's sorry, I forgot. It's been a couple weeks. maybe you could just give us some examples of where Hinesburg has been involved with some of those programs from above.
Oh, the previous page?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, so those are actually specific things that we have worked with Hinesburg on. So the grants and aid, and I don't know that it's probably around $10,000 or something that came. Sorry, I'm looking at Renee as if she would know, but I don't know if you would or not. So that was money that came through the RPC to the town directly. The disaster mitigation plan is something that the town approved probably a few months ago at the select board here. Same thing with the local emergency operation plan. So those are all things that you've been involved with us specifically. The Better Roads program down at the bottom there is the kind of getting a head start on what the town needs to do for the municipal roads general permit, which is coming. And so we got some money through that state program to help the town do the road erosion inventory. And we're looking at those priority projects with the town now. Sorry, I probably should have gone a little slower on some of those things.
No, that's fine.
Well, and specifically the sidewalk from the school
Yep.
down to Meadow Mist Village South.
Yeah, that one we're serving as a municipal project manager. So that's, we kind of provide a little, I think about it as our staff supplementing your staff. And so we kind of help manage that project for you.
And so that's going forward too?
Yeah, it looks like,
No, I mean, your support of that
Yep.
will continue to go forward.
yeah, I
with
think
the
we'll
project.
continue working with the town right through construction.
Yep.
Yep.
I don't think there's been any, I think it's not, there hasn't been construction
Yeah.
dollars.
Yeah, it's
there.
design.
Oh, it's design.
Right.
Yeah.
And
Thank
the road, municipal road, where was that? Here. Municipal road general permits, so
Yep.
some of those drafts are just starting to come out, is that?
Yes.
Yes.
So there's two levels to think about. One is the state just had a deadline for taking comments on the draft permit. So that's kind of at the state level. And then locally, we've also, I don't know if we've met with Hinesburg yet.
Yes.
Okay, we kind of inventoried all of your roads and started trying to prioritize those road segments that need to be improved for erosion issues, probably gravel roads.
Yeah.
And so, so you may know more about that than I do, right?
Yep, so we actually met with, so they have a consultant from Malone and McBroom, and so we met with that consultant last week, the highway foreman and myself, and identified out of those lists of segments, what he felt, the highway foreman felt would be the most one to look at. And so we looked at Levine Hill Road, I believe, is one of those segments. I think that was identified as one of the areas they talked about, and so Jessica's working on those.
Places where we have the most severe erosion that really directly goes, it's pretty obvious it's going right into the creek.
Yeah, yeah.
And so we're able to use some of our transportation funding to basically hire a consultant and help make sure if you need design plans, depending on how complicated the fix is, we have some funds available to help do that. And so hopefully that's working out pretty well. And again, we're really trying to supplement what the town can do with some federal and state dollars, so you can save your money for fixing things, which will be costly enough. So sorry, any more questions on that page? Yes?
Just at the beginning, you probably know there are changes where it says Andrea is the representative, but Trevor is no longer.
Yeah, so this is
here.
really looking backwards to last fiscal year.
Okay,
Yeah, so those are who your representatives were for that fiscal year.
okay, good.
Yes, yeah, we know. Yep, that's right. I don't know.
Let's see,
She's the Clean Water Advisory.
Committee.
Okay.
Yeah. And,
Merrily.
Yep.
yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if I've heard who.
Alex,
Typically,
Alex
I
is
think
planning.
Trevor did go to some of the TAC meetings.
yeah.
Yep.
I mean, sometimes the road foreman, there might be a particular topic
Right.
that's appropriate for the road foreman to
Yeah.
go, or for,
Let me
Follow
know
up
if
with
there's
Renee
something that
if
you
we
think
don't
that
have a
would be.
TAC member.
Absolutely.
Just
Good.
have an opportunity maybe to do that.
Yeah, and it is important, I think, for you to have a representative of that Transportation Advisory Committee, because, that is kind of the main body that kind of is able to push the transportation projects' priorities.
That's where most of the money is,
Right.
probably, huh?
Okay.
Yep, indeed. So then on the next page is kind of mention the projects that are in the capital program, but then the regional activities, and there's a couple pages, 2.5 pages worth of things that we kind of work on region-wide. Some of them take more or less time. But we've been trying to do a legislative forum every year to talk about priorities. We have an annual report where we look at major issues in our plan and have indicators and progress and things like that are being made. That'll come out kind of around January timeframe. We updated new population housing and employment forecasts. We've been supporting that regional dispatch study,
Sorry,
which still includes Hinesburg in this thing, which is an incorrect sentence. I apologize for that.
So, Charlie, can I just ask on the
Yeah.
population housing
Yeah.
and employment? So is that something you do on a regular basis? Are you doing it for yourself, or it's to provide for the towns?
Well, we certainly, we do it for our own work, and it's certainly available to the towns.
Yeah.
It's one of those topics where Vermont doesn't have a real clear system for coming together on projections. And so we know, I think individual towns have done projections from time to time. School districts do projections, and they don't always say the same thing.
Right.
So we did the best we could to, I think, update ours to get a little bit more realistic. And I know in particular, we were in Hinesburg, there was quite a bit of, when we were doing the 116 study a couple years ago,
Yep.
there was a feeling that ours were much more optimistic than realistic. So I think we're down at a little bit more realistic projections now.
I think for a countywide,
Yeah.
have much more realistic projections. The long-range planning committee?
Planning committee, that's right.
That was, because this is part of the update for the ECOS plan.
Mm-hmm.
So we try to keep those parts current, and then different chapters of the ECOS plan are addressed.
Yeah.
Mike?
Since we're going back to the ECOS plan, maybe you can take a minute for the viewers talk about the ECOS plan and what that is.
Yep. So we call it the ECOS plan. It's environment, community, opportunity, sustainability, although we don't typically spell out the whole acronym anymore. But and it's what we did, about 5 years ago now, is combine the 3 regional plans. So there were 3 regional plans that were having to get updated every 5 years, but they were each on a different year. So 3 out of every 5 years, we were updating a regional plan. So I think kind of a little bit after I got here, I was feeling like that didn't really make a lot of sense because the conversations were overlapping also. There was an economic development strategy, there was the Regional Planning Commission's regional plan, and there was the MPO's Metropolitan Transportation Plan. Well, all those issues are intertwined, so there's a lot of overlapping conversation. I think I sometimes called it, we were, I think, planning the region to death. And so we tried to collapse those 3 efforts into one effort, and we're in the midst of updating that right now with a real focus on the transportation plan and the SEDS, the Comprehensive Economic Development Strategy, and also energy, which is a new requirement that the legislature asked us to address this year. So there's a lot in there. We really tried to boil down the priorities for the county in general. When I talk about the county, I mean the 18 municipalities and the GOR, and into 8 key strategies to help us achieve our goals. So kind of a lot went into it. I would characterize this as kind of a minor update in general for the plan, but digging deeper, particularly into transportation and energy, maybe than we did 5 years ago. And transportation, we're spending a lot more time, I think, trying to have some realistic conversation with VTrans about priorities and scheduling. And I don't think I go and talk to anybody without hearing frustration about unrealistic or expectations about scheduling. Like, hey, we were promised this project, and there's some X number of years ago. It still hasn't gone to construction. When is it going to go to construction? So really trying to, and I think VTrans is very interested in getting, starting to build credibility on scheduling a little bit more. So we'll keep working on that. I'm not going to declare victory or anything, but I think we'll try to do that. But it also means that there's, I think, between $100 and $200 million of projects that we have on our project list that we don't think can be funded in the next 30 years. So that's a lot of expectations that aren't aligned with realities. And so can't
Is that
think of.
because the projects don't include VTrans, or is it because VTrans is like sort of agreeing without understanding?
I would say
with
those
the
are not
funds?
things that VTrans has agreed to.
Yeah.
It's been things we've agreed to as a region
Yeah.
at our table and added to our list. And so I think we've been a major party into creating unrealistic expectations, because we said, oh, okay, yeah, you're part of the plan. Well, I don't think we're being honest with ourselves or our municipalities or the public in how we talk
Probably
about
no
that.
different than us doing a town plan that has a lot in there that we know it's going to be hard to actually accomplish it all.
But I think
Yeah.
with this, there is an expectation that there's a certain amount of federal money coming. And, you know, in some years, it seems like we don't have enough projects to spend all the money that, I mean, that was probably, you know, maybe 25 years ago, there was
Yeah.
this like sense, oh, we don't have enough projects, you know, in the pipeline. And right now, it's just really hard to predict whether we're going to, you know, what the funding level's going to be, because an awful lot of,
Yeah, I think we've spent some time and have a decent sense of that. And there are a lot of things in V-Trans's defense, there are a lot of things that do happen, you know, whether it's an appeal of a permit or running into a permit issue that they didn't know, or right away. So things can get hung up, and, you know, I think once a project gets hung up, then attention shifts to another project, and, you know, that's how things get delayed. But, yeah, right now, it feels like they have a lot more projects in the queue than can really come out each year. So anyway, we're trying to work with them to, and work with our board and the municipalities to get more realistic and, well, I guess that's the bottom line. So we'll hope we get there.
Michael?
So to add to that, John, understand it's a countywide planning.
Yep.
How can each town feel that they're getting served appropriately?
Within that transportation plan?
With any plan, the Eco's plan as a whole.
Yeah,
But yeah, specifically the transportation, because we were talking tonight about the CVU one.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
been on the books forever.
Yep. So I think with the transportation plan in particular, we'd probably have the most analytical tools. There's a whole model that we've developed and invested a lot in. And we're spending more time trying to use that model as much as we can to help us prioritize. So I don't know that it will be, you know, there's not a fair share notion, like every town doesn't get, you know, 5% of the projects or whatever, but we're trying to make sure there's a clear rationale, and this is a work in process right now, but trying to make sure there's a clear rationale so that at the end of the day, even though we all might not like, you know, pieces of the details of it, we can all at least support the conclusions of like, okay, that was a rational decision that is, you know, getting us the best results that we can for the money, which is, so we're working on it, Michael.
Well, I just think, sorry. I'm trying to get this, I know what I'm saying, get that mic out of Mike's hand. Well, people like to know those things. So it's not just me, it's just, I'm curious. It's been a real exciting learning curve for me. It's been very entertaining. Educational. Entertaining's not a good word. Educational. So, but to expand to the town and understanding that, those things, sure.
And, you know, and I think there are other situations where it's much easier to kind of like work with every town, like the stormwater work. You know, every town has obligations that are coming with that municipal roads general permit. And so that's an area where we're like, okay, we're going to be working with every town. There's nobody standing in line. You know, you'll be creating your own list of projects, but anyway, we're going to help as much as we can to help move those along. So I'm sorry. So I don't have a lot other or any other questions, I guess, because there's a lot of different topics on this list as you look at it.
Yeah, I mean, so we appreciate the update, and you're going to go to the other towns, I guess. Is there anything specific that you want to leave us with? And also, is there anything, you know, that we could be either doing better or for us to watch out for over the next year, let's say, to...
Andrea has some ideas, but I think honestly the topics, you know, the transportation plan, the stormwater work, the other thing that I think we've probably been talking more with your planning commission on, and I can't remember if you have an energy committee or not, but
We do,
with your energy committee is on the energy plan.
Yeah, our planning commission and energy committee has, via Alex, has sent in a lot of comments.
Yeah, and really a lot of credit to Hinesburg, I think, because you do have the folks that you send to our meetings are engaged and representing the town very well. So thank you for that. I mean, if you didn't have that, that's what I would be saying. but I think you do have a lot of engagement that's thoughtful and constructive and helpful. So I don't have any suggestions for the town per se.
Energy
Yep.
plan, I think there's only one so far that's been submitted and approved, is that right, by the state?
Regional energy plans?
Regional one.
The first one was in Bennington. There were 3 of them that went first. So I was just as glad not to be on the bleeding edge of that. So the ones that went first, the 3 of them have all been reviewed and approved now by the state. That's Northwest, 2 Rivers, which is White River Junction area, and Bennington. And then the rest of the regions are all kind of coming in this next wave, and we'll all be submitting to the state. We did a preliminary draft in June, and we'll be submitting more formal this spring. So we'll be going, I guess the other heads up I have for you is just hopefully there aren't issues, and we'll sort the issues out in the next 2 to 3 months before we go to public hearing drafts in February, March, April, May timeframe. Of those 3 planning documents.
And maybe this question might be more for Mara Lee, on how much are you involved in the Lake Champlain and, you know, that whole push, clean water?
How much is the Regional Planning Commission, the
Yeah,
QUAC
involved in
committee?
that. I mean, there seemed to be a lot of pressure from a lot of sides, in the EPA and the state, and, you know, so.
Yeah, I would say they're very involved in it. They're doing it from a watershed basin viewpoint, and we're meeting tomorrow, and we're going to be looking at 2 watershed basin plans.
Oh, basin by, yeah, sort of, okay, yeah.
Yeah, so there's an update to the direct-to-lake basin, and then the Winooski plan,
Right,
which
yeah.
is, you know, a much bigger basin plan, is kind of in process. That'll be finalizing this time next year. And those plans serve the basis, again, this notion of kind of prioritizing what needs to be done for water quality. And as far as towns are concerned, a big part of that is the municipal roads permit.
Yeah.
And then we've really been kind of a similar story to V-Trans, kind of working with A&R on how they prioritize other capital funds, and trying to help really help A&R get that money out to municipalities in particular. There's obviously other players, farmers and others, private landowners, watershed associations who are going to help with water quality projects. But there's a big lift going on, and kind of it's a big leap from where we were in terms of the amount of money that's trying to get out into the landscape to help address that problem. So.
Michael, did you have something else? No?
No, unless you want to give another quick update on regional dispatch.
Happy to do that. So dispatch, this time last year, I think we were just kind of studying it. We're now at a point where we're waiting to hear back from the Attorney General's office, who has to formally review the draft agreement to set up a union municipal district. So I think early, probably 6-8 months ago, it was kind of decided that would be the best governance model. So there's a draft agreement with an attached funding MOU. So that will be going out to the towns that have dispatch staff. And again, I'm sorry, it's a little misleading that Hinesburg and Richmond are on this list here. The other towns have dispatch staff kind of directly, and so those are I guess I'll call them the primary partners that are working on this. So those towns will be considering whether to put that creation of the Union Municipal District, or the Chittenden County Public Safety Authority, I think is the name of it, on the ballot. That's a big difference. Ballot for town meeting day.
And we won't have to do that. Right.
That is a kind of a concern that I've brought forward, is that, you know, when this organization is formed, we will be paying into that. And I had kind of hoped that we would be able, I fully support this regional dispatch, but it seems like potentially could have been an opportunity for all of the municipalities to be part of it, and maybe that will evolve, but these ones obviously have staff and budgets that they have to, and there has,
Dispatch without representation.
Yes.
We've been talking about that for
Basically is what it is.
250 years,
Yeah.
right?
yeah,
Yeah, and obviously you guys are tied in with Shelburne.
right.
So.
But it's a year-to-year contract.
Right. Well, but even in terms of this decision, if
Yes.
Shelburne puts it on the ballot, that has implications for you. If they don't, that has implications for you.
Right.
I think the towns that, and thank you, Andrew, these towns, are spending, well, in total between those 6 or 7 towns, I think they spend about $3.5 million on dispatch staff, like just pure dispatching. And so it was very important to them. They were trying to listen to the towns, because I think about a year ago, we were kind of out, maybe it was February timeframe. I was probably here, and we were talking about dispatch. And I think they did hear that issue, like, hey, if we're a contracting town, how do we have a voice at this table? Like, we know we're not spending as much as you that have staff doing this, but we still have an interest. And so take a look at the agreement. They did try to have provision so that the contract towns have some representation at 2 levels. One is that they participate at the chiefs level, so that the chiefs, and I can't remember the name of the committee that they were talking
They're
about.
organized in a committee that
But
have
there's kind of the
input.
advisory
Yeah.
committee that is like, who's the user of the services, right?
Right.
I mean, the fire departments, the police departments, they sure care about how that dispatch service is being delivered. So we wanted kind of the committee of chiefs to make sure that the service was getting feedback. And then at a little higher level was wanting to have kind of a board rep of the contracting towns. So I don't know which town or how the towns will sort out who that is, but they did want to make sure that voice was at kind of the board of the body, as well as having that chief saying. So I think, they're trying to balance a lot of interests, and I think I've been really encouraged with how thoughtful, how well they've been trying to listen and address issues, and we'll see how it goes, at the town select boards and city councils, and at the ballot box in May or March. So.
Okay.
Anything else? I don't want to take up
Yeah.
too much time.
Is there any other questions or discussion?
Do you have any preliminary numbers that have come in so far from storm damage that's been reported for the windstorm?
I did see some numbers, and now I'm forgetting what they were. I want to say it was, well, it gets put in a couple different categories. So I want to say the public damage, so municipal costs were in the like $600,000 range for Chittenden County.
Yeah.
So I think combined up, that number seems low, but I don't know. I think I just saw that number flash across my email today.
Yeah.
But combined with the other towns, I did see the state is submitting for federal disaster aid. So we definitely crossed that $1 million threshold.
I was wondering if we crossed that here in Chittenden County alone.
But
'cause as I understand it, Chittenden County was one of the more harder hit
Yeah,
areas.
it was definitely much harder hit.
Yeah.
But it wasn't the kind of, like in flood events, we get like road damage and
Yeah.
bigger capital dollar costs to the towns. This was a lot of tree branch clearing, and frankly, a lot of the cost was actually on the utilities. And so, and they don't qualify for public assistance because it's not a municipal
Right.
organization. And so I don't have all those numbers yet, but I know Chittenden County was included in the disaster declaration for sure.
And does regional planning take into account at all any ag figures there, or is that done?
For damage?
Yeah.
We get asked by the State Emergency Operations Center.
Yeah.
Basically, we have a formal role to collect up the data from the municipalities and try to roll that up and report it to the state, but it's just municipal damage. So I don't have an insight into business damage or ag damage
thought.
or utility damage. So anyway, but thank you very much for giving me some time tonight and your participation in our efforts, and let us know if there's other ways that you think we can help you. So,
Good, thank you very much.
all right, thank you.
Okay, The next item on the agenda, it's really just a basic discussion. As we've mentioned before, we've working on a water supply development agreement with BlackRock Construction. This has been in the works, I think, 9 months maybe or so. I think the process was we were approached by BlackRock and concerning a well they put in to explore increasing the capacity of the town system. We know we will need to increase our capacity. The treatment system is designed, I'll say it's at half of its capacity, so there's more capacity that could be added to it. The town took BlackRock's proposal, I'll say, a draft proposal. We had discussions within the town folks. We had Selectboard representation, Eric from the water, Alex looked it over in an effort to make sure the town needs were covered in there. We've since, I think, gone back and forth a little bit with the agreement. Why don't you come on up, Ben?
You can actually sit with the guests.
Yeah, you can sit at the witness table. And I think we've gone back and forth a bit. It's been a fairly open process. And the last step, I think, really is we've after we had some input, gave it to our lawyer representative to take a look at it and make sure the T's are crossed and the I's are dotted, and I think we're pretty close to it. And that's where we are, I think, in the process. And it's an interesting process in that, we want it to be as open as possible, but it is a negotiation at the same time. So I expect within probably a week it'll come out, because we seem to be that close. We really are just a couple of last little details. And we'll have a lot of discussion about it, I'm sure.
Well, I think to sort of round out the background, we were actually approached by the Water and Sewer Department about this. And we actually, the site selection was the town site selection. There were 3 well sites that were identified, and this was the prime site by the selection of the hydrologists that was contracted by the town. We had, obviously, we would have loved to have had a development agreement in there before we spent any money, but as a sign of good faith, we did drill 480 feet, I think, and that gave us a well driller's report of 140 gallons a minute. That is, that's at a 6-inch diameter as opposed to a standard 8. So through this process, we've agreed to widen it to 8, which, again, by the well driller's estimate, should give us another boost of anywhere from 30 to 50%. And then we've also agreed to go another 220 feet. So, where this is a bit of a crystal ball, it certainly seems to us, and not to me personally, I'm not a well expert, but it seems based on feedback from the well driller and from town staff that there's a reasonable assumption that we could yield pretty healthy amount of water from this well. And I think that the sort of secondary benefit of finding common ground and an agreement is if for some reason this well does not yield the full amount to bring the town treatment system to its capacity, it's a model with which the developer on an adjacent property could be approached. And, I think it would be reasonable to assume that if you approached them with a established contract that sort of we've all put in the time, so it's very plug and play for that person. Reasonable to assume that may be able to make up any shortfall in relatively short order. So this legal piece is the last piece. And we would intend to, assuming we can work through this in the coming weeks, we would get them out there pretty much immediately to wrap up and complete the work. And then I think in the spirit of the agreement, the concept is that we're allowed to move forward on whatever piece we can in allocation based on whatever's there for wastewater, but it allows us to begin to move down the permitting path on a portion of our project while the town continues its efforts to either find more water, or hopefully if this one fills it, it'll probably still take a year to 18 months to get it all done. One of the upsides of this location is it's only, I think, 200 feet or 150
That's a
feet
huge benefit there, yeah.
from the main line.
Right.
So the physical infrastructure piece, where I don't want to minimize the amount of work, it is in a reasonably accessible location. So.
Yeah,
So that's
I think you've described it pretty well, and I'm okay saying that while at first blush, you sort of look at it and say, oh, a developer wants to give us a well, and obviously, for some advantage there, but in actuality, everyone will be able to see the agreement. It really just opens the door for the town to we've stopped development because of the inability to provide water. Right now, that's the limiting factor. And this sort of opens the door and to allow our processes to sort of move forward. And that could be BlackRock, but it's any of the developers. The door will open up in a really fair way, I think. So, and I think you're right in that we've heard from several developers who have said, they understand the constraints we have, water, wastewater, whatever it might be, and they've said, hey, what can we do to sort of help? And I think this is a very good example of something that could be done to sort of help the process.
And I think that it's important for people to understand that what we would be receiving in consideration for this agreement, it is an intangible. The risk for us is we could dedicate the well, and sure, we get 50 units of allocation, because that's what we can get, and move on down the line in our process, but that doesn't actually mean we can tie in. It's important for folks to understand that's not giving us a blank check to tie in. It simply allows us to move forward in the process. Our ability to pull a zoning permit would be contingent on the water source being brought online. So it's important for people to understand, because I think
it opens the door to take the next step forward.
Exactly.
For you and any of the other developers, because there'll be capacity basically for everybody to some level. It increases that capacity for any future developers. So.
And we're going to work on an allocation policy.
Yeah. I think we're pretty darn close.
Yeah.
And I would be surprised if in the next couple of weeks we don't have this thing finalized to some point. I mean, you guys have looked at it. You're feeling good about it.
to death. I've had
Yeah, and so
many a
and
meeting.
we have too. We've had a lot of good input and from different aspects from the town, Alex and our wastewater, and so I think we're pretty well there. So we'll move forward with this as fast as we can.
One question I would have on the allocation process, as it's written right now, nobody can get allocation because there is no water. So by the terms of this agreement, it would open up a certain percentage of whatever estimated yield to us in the allocation process. Would that be a carve-out in the current allocation language, or would you have to revise the allocation policy?
I think we need to,
Yeah.
we need to understand the agreement, and then we would need to look at our allocation policy, and I think we can't make a decision now on how we would do that.
But, I mean, I think at this point, I mean, until we make, if we were to make any changes, I mean, I think, you know, we have this constraint, and now, you know, and we have an allocation policy in place, so now if this constraint opens up, then that would be the.
Yeah, because I would, not that I'm looking to delay this any more than it's been delayed, but there would be a cause and effect. So if the select board were to, in December, accept this agreement, there is a high likelihood you could be looking at me back here in January looking for allocation, because it's not going to take me that long to drill the well. We can get the preliminary pump downs and certifications done, and then we can mathematically figure out. It is highly likely, because our initial phase concept is actually not a whole lot by a wastewater stand or well water standpoint. It's highly likely we wouldn't even utilize what was allowed to us under that agreement. But it is likely that we would turn around very quickly and be in for allocation, because there is a limited amount of wastewater. So we wouldn't dilly-dally there. We'd be ready to go. And so the reason I asked the question is we wouldn't want to then create a conundrum down the line, as I know that sometimes, not with us, but with other folks, it can, there can be legal questions. And so we wouldn't want to get caught up in that crossfire. So we would want to feel comfortable that as the town enters into this agreement, that you have the mechanism in place to be looking at me 30 or 40 days later and say, okay, we can give you allocation for this. So, just a question.
I mean, you know, there is a conundrum in front of us, though. We know that, you know, even with all the water, if we were to, you know, they're both moving targets, this water and wastewater, and we know there's not the capacity to do a complete build-out of what's possible. So we know we have that conundrum.
No, I think we've scaled our initial phase. I've worked with Eric and with Alex to scale our initial phase to work within the existing wastewater parameters. And I think that's, you know, Alex feels pretty good about that plan. It's been, I don't know, you folks maybe even have seen it.
We haven't seen it, yeah.
Yeah.
So I think it's really premature for us to be talking about it, because I think we really did make a commitment to be looking at what policies we would have in place for allocations.
Fair enough.
So, all right,
Does that sound good?
sounds good.
All right. Any other questions or thoughts?
So we'll need to have this as an agenda item once the draft is ready, because
Right.
the select board as a whole, even though we've had representation on this working group, the select board as a whole has not seen this document.
Certainly not the latest, you know,
Right,
updates to it.
the updated
Yeah.
one. So
I don't think
the-
I've seen the latest. I haven't seen a red line back from, is it Joe Fallon that has it?
No, I have a different attorney that's been working on it. And so he had some technical questions that he needed to get answered by Eric, and so that's where it's at right now.
Okay.
So the process will be, you'll get that back, run it by Ben.
Yeah, if there's any
Yeah.
changes to
Yeah.
what we'd already agreed on, because what went to the attorney was what we had all met with.
It could change, but I don't imagine it's going to be much there. So
If
I think
there's
we're
a
pretty close.
minor- We've turned around the last few drafts in a day. I mean, it's been really subtle tweaks.
Okay.
So, it did grow from one page to three.
An attorney is going to look at it from a legal standpoint for ensuring the town's.
Yeah, I think so,
covered.
yeah. And you know, I got to see some of the red lines, and he moved some things around, so I was like, but, you know, it doesn't seem like there's anything of, it's
No,
really
it-
just cleaning it up.
it's-
And he
it's
had a
pretty
couple technical
straightforward.
questions, yeah.
Yeah, I think they were more technical questions that he had, and so those are ones that Eric could speak to. And so I think once that is addressed, and if there weren't any substantive changes to the document, then we could have it on the next Select Board agenda, so that's
We'll
in
get it
front
out
of you
there so
guys.
everybody can have a chance to see it. We'll have at least a couple of meetings to discuss it, so.
I think the desire is to keep this an open process, and so that everyone feels like it's, the document is well-received, and that Hinesburg can see the benefit, both the residents and the town can see the benefit to this.
Perfect. All right,
All right,
thank you.
thank
Yeah, thank you, yeah. Item 5 on the agenda, consider appointing an individual to serve in vacant elected positions until March 2018 elections. I'm going to let Renee explain this one. It seems pretty simple, but go ahead, I'm going to let
Right.
you do it.
So over the course of, well, actually, when I was working with on signing an easement for the last easement, the trail easement that was gifted to the town, it came up that we needed to have a town agent. So I followed up, and Missy followed up with the elections office. I followed up with VLCT. And it turns out, yes, we do need to have any empty seats of elected officials have to be filled. So the reason they're empty, Bud Allen previously held those positions, so as town agent and grand juror. And then he decided he didn't want to run again in the spring, and no one else volunteered to run. So those seats remained open. And after a lot of discussion and pleading with people, we finally have someone who is willing to do it. So Frank Twarog is willing to be appointed this evening. And this would be...
Not a conflict between moderator and,
it.
because there are some offices that you
Yeah,
can't.
so I know
hold
select
both.
board members.
And town agent is a conflict.
That's a good question. Let me just see if I have those documents. I want to make sure moderator isn't one of those.
I don't know why it would
And
be.
town administrator can't be.
So town administrator, it's not listed by state statute, but there could be a perceived conflict because there's that employer-employee relationship. And so it wasn't, even though the elections office didn't have an issue with it, VLCT didn't recommend
Okay.
that being.
Conservative way, they're saying, maybe that's not the best thing to do, even though it's
Right.
not clear, you can't do it. But I think it is clear, a select board member
A select
can't
board
be,
by state
cannot
statute
be
Cannot.
town
Right.
agent.
Yeah. Let me just check and see if there was.
But the town agent can then designate the town administrator to be the signer.
Yeah, yes. So the town, I mean, really, the town agent and the grand juror, there isn't a lot for them to do. They're just something that are in state
Right.
statute. If we had a charter, we could perhaps remove those positions, but since we don't, then we are obligated to keep them filled.
Okay.
I am not finding where it was showing in state statute who is absolutely not allowed, where it included the select board members.
It's hard to see why there would be a conflict.
Yeah, I can't imagine that moderator would have a conflict with that. But, I mean, I guess you guys could go ahead and appoint him this evening, and I'll follow up on it. And if for some reason I find out that there is, that their moderator can't serve in those roles, then we'll have to go back to square one and at the next meeting, appoint someone else, and I'll have to offer them candy as well.
Well, I'll make a motion to appoint Frank Twarog to fill the position of town agent and grand juror for the term to expire in March 2018.
Yeah, so this would
Okay.
only get us over to
Yeah.
the election, time of election, and then someone would have to run.
I second it.
Is there any discussion?
Yes, so though, can the town agent delegate his authority to the town administrator to sign those documents? Or are we going to have to call Frank up every time we want to have some document
Right.
signed?
I mean, what we had found out, and is that if we were selling land, then
Yes.
it would need to be the town agent. It wasn't clear that if someone was gifting us an easement, that it needed to be, it was just a duly authorized representative of the town. So I think for that issue, I think it would be okay, but if Frank is
Okay.
able to sign, he could certainly do that. But I don't think the one issue is what's causing us to have this.
Right, but I just meant, you know, in general.
In general.
You know, because sometimes we make a motion
Yeah.
for you to sign it, or.
Right.
You know.
And I think in follow-up with Roger, as long as you guys made a motion for me to sign, then I think that was okay for that particular document. So that's it.
Yeah, so we're not finding any conflict there.
I'm not
as far as
seeing
with town
anything, but again,
Town
the moderator.
moderator.
I know that handbook that you're referring to.
Right, it's
And I'm
the-
not
yep.
finding it yet here.
It's the VLCT handbook for Vermont town officers.
Yeah.
So we're going to vote on it?
Yeah, I think so, huh? So all those in favor of the motion to appoint Frank as both town agent and grand juror until March of 2018, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. So any opposed? So the motion's passed. Thank you, Frank. Next, item 6 is just a recap of the Select Board retreat. That sounds like a very fun evening. I guess I'd call it an offsite or retreat. So we'll just sort of have an open discussion about how it went. We have minutes, which I think we'll eventually have to approve.
Yeah.
So,
Depends, I'm not sure that you guys, because some of those are equivalent to executive session conversations. I'm not sure in the past if, I mean, there could be minutes that, you know, are basically kind of what we're talking about tonight is just an overall.
recap.
Yeah.
So, well, you know, I thought, Renee and I thought we'd just have a little recap, discussion of it. I'll kind of set exactly what went on. We met off-site. Really, the agenda, it was facilitated by Deb Howard. And it really was to focus on how the Select Board and the Town Administrator work together or don't work together, and how we could improve our processes and become a better team, more better functioning team, improve communication. So we had several items. We had a discussion about how we make decisions, what the decision-making process is. We talked about how we operate as individuals and respect our opinions and the input that each of us have in the process. We did talk about social media and the impact of social media in the town and what, as a board, and what the town administrator might be doing associated with that. We talked about the process to hire a new assistant town administrator. So we worked as a group on how that process could be. I think that sort of covers most of what we discussed. I thought I could go through and just sort of say, here are some of the sort of actions or things we agreed to going forward, but I'll sort of open it up and let anybody else sort of talk about that evening, how it went, and any other key takeaways that you might have had.
Thought it was a valuable conversation. We came up with a plan, I'll call it a plan of attack, but it's more or less steps of communication and how we're going to address certain issues, which I thought was valuable, especially for Renee. It was basically her first day, somewhere in there. Yeah, I thought it was a good conversation. Deb was right. She is one of the best.
I guess for my comment, I felt very positive leaving from it, and I feel like we're moving in a good direction, and I feel really positive for our future and the relationship between the town administrator, select board, and then just in general what that models to our community and to our boards and committees. So that was a glass half full.
Yeah, I will say that it wasn't Skittles and rainbows necessarily. The whole evening, we opened up a few scabs and we, dug deep, and where we have to be honest with our feelings or our concerns and the idea to bring them up. We did leave a sort of informal agreement that we would, what we call the process, if something's not going as we expect they should, that any one of us can sort of stop. And, an example might be, for example, if I wasn't, calling on Marilee, wanted to add some comments to a discussion and it didn't appear like you were getting what you wanted, you'd be able to sort of say, wait a minute here, this isn't working for me. I need to, I have something to say, and nobody's heard what I had to say. So any one of us could do that, including Renee. So I thought it was a fairly open and honest discussion. Doesn't mean the work is done, but it's the kind of work that helps build a functioning team to get the work done, I guess.
Yeah, to kind of recap that, it gave us some tools in which to do that work. And it also, I think, the only time we ever meet is here in a meeting, and this allowed an opportunity for us to have a discussion that wasn't about agenda topics, but rather about us, and us as in both us at this table, but the collective us as a town, to find ways to best do the work that we've been tasked with by the folks who put us here. And that was really a refreshing night. And like Phil said, it wasn't always, would you say, Skittles and rainbows, but it was productive nonetheless, yeah.
So some of the takeaways we had, and I'll call them actions, I think one big one, which I have said I'm willing to do, and now I'm making a real commitment, is there was a number of items we identified as either good policies that we should follow, or perhaps good, respectful policies, I'll say, on how we treat each other. And I had said I'm willing to sort of draw up a very draft sort of select board meeting policy, we'll call it, and, how we should operate and some basic standards. One of the standards we discussed, which seems to make sense, and that is that if there is a significant decision, I think the water supply development agreement with BlackRock's a great example. That's not something we would bring, we agreed, it wouldn't be a good policy to bring that one day and vote on it that one day. I mean, there's a lot to it, and we sort of said, hey, we'll have a general policy that sort of says, we'll bring things, we'll get them out in the open, we'll have a discussion, give everybody an opportunity to become educated, and maybe even, in a way, indirectly poll how town folks are feeling, or department heads, if they have some input in it, give them an opportunity, and then address it on a follow-on meeting or, and if it's a big enough topic, develop a schedule that says, we're going to discuss it here, we're going to do this, we're going to discuss it again, then we're going to vote on it. So everybody knows what the expectations are and the work necessary to move it forward. So there's, I think, less surprises that way. That was one thing that we decided we'd put in there. So again, I'm happy to draw up a draft policy for everybody to review, just to get something down. We talked about, board and employee, how to, respectful treatment expectations, I think. And so that piece we have something like that similar in our committees. There's a policy, but, so maybe that's where that goes, but I'm talking about two different sort of groupings. One is how our board operates and some of the specific things associated with our board, and then some general behavior expectations for all the boards. Because I think part of our discussion too, we did discuss, some of the issues over the last couple of years might have been behaviors, either select board or community members or whatever, how that interrupted, good processes. And we should be able to get those, have an expectation of a certain behavior that allows input but not disruption, I guess. So that's one action. I think we talked about social media and how there's a lot of information and maybe some misinformation on Front Porch Forum as an example. And we said we were reluctant to get into Front Porch Forum because sometimes that's not the best way to communicate. But I believe we decided that it could be used as an informational, like here's a summary of what happened in our meeting. Here's a summary of what's happening in some activity. I think Renee and I were talking with at the highway garage. It might be good to have once a month just an informational summary of what's happening, and Front Porch Forum could be used very well for that. So we talked about how we could utilize social media in a way that is productive.
And the only caution that we need to be aware of when towns use social media is to make sure there isn't conversations going on. So just like email, if a select board member posts something on Front Porch Forum and then two other select board members comment on it, either maybe in other weeks, but it's related to that same conversation, that that can get us into a situation with the open meeting law. So I think if we use it as just what Phil has talked about and what we just as just a way to get information out there, an information tool, that is fine.
And we also talked about I think, slippery slope where a select board member might have a conversation or have a complaint brought in from somebody from town. They want to relay that complaint through the town administrator, ideally, who would then go to the department manager so that the right people are part of the conversation. And then if something gets done or whatever, just so that the select board is informed, but tries not to be too much in the middle of things. Marilee?
And I want to add, because it's so easy to get into this on Front Porch Forum, but we agreed that if there was an issue that the town needed to clarify, there would be one post about that issue. There wouldn't be a back and forth, well, what we really meant was this, and you don't really understand. No, just one, period. That's it.
And on that, to piggyback on that, I think we talked about having a post after a meeting of a summary of the meeting, of which I'm making notes of here. A sentence or two per agenda item is kind of the format and length, with maybe links to relevant documents and to VCAM. You could always watch it here on VCAM. My question was, is that something you're posting, Renee, or is it something I'm posting? Did we ever decide that? And does it matter?
I thought we talked about you.
I'm fine with doing
Doing a
it.
summary.
I'm fine with
Doing the
it.
summary,
Yep.
then the actual posting, I'm not sure.
Yeah. Would it, yeah,
The Select Board will present the facts once in an official-looking format that Aaron agreed to mock up, but not to engage in back and forth. Aaron will add a disclaimer. Renee is ultimately responsible for monitoring Front Porch Forum and recommending to the Select Board how to respond, parentheses, for controversial issues. But the Select Board agreed to help her monitor posts, draft responses, post information, etc. And it is also expected that department heads will help with posts in their areas of responsibility. So it didn't fall directly on your shoulders, I guess, Aaron.
so,
We didn't answer the one question
Correct.
you were asking, right?
so I'm fine with doing it, but I wanted to ask before I did it, if it needs to be me, if it wants to be you, Renee,
I think
I'm
what we
willing to
talked about
defer.
is sort of having that on kind of near the end of every meeting and do a little recap of what we felt like was important to distribute out to the community. And so whether maybe you're just creating that template and then we're making notes and I can post, but it's, I guess we can decide here this evening what makes sense to that. But as long as we have a good working
I'd like
template.
to decide this evening,
Yeah.
if we could,
Yeah.
because what I have here, I would like to go out in tomorrow's Front Porch Forum by either me or you or somebody.
Yeah.
And maybe the process, without putting more work on your plate, or maybe for the assistant you're going to hire, I don't know, is for me to take these notes that I made, and send them out to all of us with the intent for you to act upon them.
Yeah.
Does that work?
So if you have the template in place and you're doing this at the meeting, and whether or not you're sending it out to everybody just to confirm this is what we talked about, and then that would be ready to go.
A heads up of
Yeah.
what is going out ahead
And
of
as long
time.
as I have a Word document of that, then I copy paste it and post that on,
Yeah.
do the Front Porch Forum based on that.
Does that work for everybody?
Yeah.
Yeah?
You probably should say, these are not the minutes.
Correct.
If you want the
Right.
whole thing, look at VCAM.
Yep.
This is just a snapshot.
Have there
Yeah.
is that, it's just a recap. And labeled as such, here are the minutes, here's the minute packet, here's the VCAM link,
Yep.
Is that one unnecessary step? Would it be easier if Aaron just posted it rather than Renee having to go through that process?
Well, that's my question, I know what it says, but you guys don't, so do you,
I like the idea of sending it out to all of us, but whether Renee needs to be the one to post it, that's my question.
good question.
I think initially it might be good to have Renee, it just comes across, you look at it, assuming fine, and just send it on. And you could send us just really complimentary copies. It's not for us to sort of comment and, and all that.
If we don't check Front Porch Forum,
Right.
that we
we'd have
see
seen
what
it.
went out.
Sure.
Yeah.
So my thought is you get it in a format that it's sort of ready to go. And, you, by the next morning, you sometime before Front Porch Forum, you send it out to Renee, copy us. Renee, you just take it and post it.
Right.
And then after a little bit while, we decide, is that step necessary? Yeah.
So the other step that
Go ahead.
the other step that we didn't talk about that I thought about after is on the Select Board page, we have agenda, meeting packet, minutes, and I would just add another one of recap, which is what this would be. So that way, if it's easy to do, it's another step, but maybe that has value, I don't know.
Honestly, I don't want to, I think you're going to be burdened with extra work. I kind of want to avoid that.
All right. Well, it's already written.
I know, but it's another step.
It
You're
is.
busy,
It
Renee's
is.
busy, everybody's busy, I think.
Yeah, and I think Renee put on the agenda here, I thought, or on the annotated, is there anything? So we might say that at the end of the meeting. Is there anything that we should, is there anything worthwhile? There might be times it's maybe not necessary. I don't know.
So you're saying, see, I was going into this thinking a sentence or two about every agenda item. But what I'm hearing is not necessarily.
Right, yeah, I'm not sure that it warrants.
I think some agenda items may speak for themselves. I mean,
Yes.
just the agenda, when they look at the agenda, that it could be clear. I think, and you guys correct me if I'm wrong, my thought was that we were doing this because there's always going to be minutes for people to look at. But this is, if there's something that we really feel like is important to get that out there, information or something that we're going to be having on an agenda in a meeting or two away, we want people to know about it. Those are the things that we want to, the information.
Or, I think a good example is we made a decision, the select board made a decision, I don't know, 9 months ago to do a temporary thing at Baldwin Road. And that would be a really good thing to get out there, that people are going to see that. I think that would be an example of something. So maybe we don't consider we'll always have something, because we have the minutes, we have VCAM. But that, is there anything that came out of this meeting that would be worthwhile posting in this informational template? And that you were going to make this sort of template that also could be used in the middle of the week, like I was considering doing something about the CSWD. So I don't think I sent it to everybody, but I think I sent it out and said, hey, I'm thinking, we're thinking about this. What do we think? So, maybe we have that template, and each meeting we go, is there something that's worthwhile to let people know? Hey, we're painting all the sidewalks blue. Yeah.
So this is strictly, what I'm hearing is strictly supplemental, but instead of additional.
Yes.
I think it could be something that we discuss at the near the end of every meeting and decide was there something in here that we really want to get out to the public, either something that's coming up on a future agenda item or something we've talked about that we were looking for feedback or wanting to get that information out. I mean, does that seem to be what you guys are, your intent?
Include where you can find the VCAM, you could
Yep.
put the VCAM link on there. You could put, I guess, where you could find the minutes.
The link
where
to the
agenda
select
is.
board page, yeah.
Contact, that kind of stuff.
So, I mean, like one paragraph, I think, is going to cover this.
Yeah,
Agreed.
and maybe it's just a link to the select board page, because all that stuff is on there. They can find the minutes, they can find that. So, yeah, as part of that standard template. This is information, information from the select board, informational post, and then there's a little stuff, and then you can always find more information here, or if you have questions.
And I think a good example is as we're getting into the budget season, we really would like to have people be part of this process and have a good understanding before town meeting so that they have questions or if they have feedback that they can have those opportunities to provide it and feel like they've been part of that process and they aren't all of a sudden being surprised when they see they open up their town report or go to town meeting, so.
So, and I think we'll ask the question at the end of this meeting, was there anything worthwhile? But if there isn't, let me propose that you do work on this sort of template. And we could post to say, this is a new informational posting we're going to start using, just so that people will see it. And then I think if it is an informational posting, I'd propose that they do go through Renee. So there might be one I write, there might be one Tom, any one of us could write it, but no matter what, it always sort of runs through Renee. That'll be part of I'll write that in as part of the policy.
I mean, the one thing that it's a little bit tangent, is to always make sure, though, that the agenda is posted on Front Porch Forum.
Yeah, and that is what I intend to do each time, and it just sometimes falls. So I'm certainly not intending to not do it, but that you're right, and that's a good reminder.
And the other thing, though, is I think that there's a limit to the number of posts that someone can put in a month.
Oh, really?
On Front Porch Forum, because I remember Alex one time mentioning that. So we should just check. So maybe it does have to rotate so that we don't bump up against that.
Yeah, I wasn't aware of that, but if that's, so I'll have to check into that. But no, that's a good reminder, because I do want to get the agendas posted on Front Porch Forum, and I was doing good for a little while, and then that sort of fell through the cracks. So, I know. Details.
And in the parking lot items, we did say, we talked about some quarterly check-ins, which we need to sort of work on that. And also potentially the next offsite, or what did we call this thing? Retreat. That, you know, it's our hope to expand it to department heads. And we know we're in a busy season, so we'll try to sort of think about how we work that in.
Renee, I'm just wondering how you could get the agenda on Front Porch Forum when it's usually not finalized until Monday. I mean, there are usually last-minute things that come in and changes that need to be made. And anyway, even if you had it finalized by Friday, not necessarily is there going to be a Front Porch Forum that's going to, although they do come out pretty
Front Porch
often.
Forum usually comes
Every
out
day.
daily.
Yeah.
so
Yeah, I guess so, sometimes more than once a day.
Usually the agenda is finalized by Friday. There's some times that I'm waiting for some little thing. I mean, very few times that we've had to, you know, for whatever the schedule is, Saturday morning, but Friday is usually, I mean, that's when we do it. And so if,
To make it easier for you, I wondered if you could just give a generalized agenda and encourage people to look at the website if they wanted more detail, because it's always up to date there.
or like maybe posting a draft version if we don't
Yeah,
have it
yeah.
finalized.
Yeah.
Okay. Yep, no, that's good.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think you did a good job. I mean, you weren't sure that the haystack thing was going to be on there.
Right.
But you posted it, and then
Yeah,
if it comes
and-
off, it's like, it's.
Yeah,
not a
and
big-
that's why I remembered to do Front Porch Forum this time, because I thought, you know what, I want to get that out there so people are aware.
Yeah.
And so,
Yeah.
yep.
Anything else? So I think, if I haven't already said it, I thought it was well worth it, the time to do that, and we'll remember that and do the same thing again at some point to make sure we're, you know, working efficiently as a group and not 6 different individuals or 7. So, all right, we'll move to the next item on the agenda, and that's Town Administrator Report.
All right, so a few things, but I did get the job advertisement out, and so that is on our website. It's out on Front Porch Forum probably this evening. It's also on VLCT, and I'm in communication with 7 Days and trying to determine what the length of time we'll have that run based on pricing and everything. But it's out in all of the key areas that we can advertise in, you know, right away. And I guess, Aaron, I'd ask if you could put it on our Facebook page, because I think that's a way people can share links if they know of someone, hey, I know someone who's looking, and so that might be a good way of also getting it out there. But the link it goes to the job description as well on the website, and so.
You know, I think we were encouraged to make sure the job description included, you know, all the positive things about Hinesburg. And I was just thinking about, if we do post on Front Porch Forum, it would be nice if we could get a department head or 2 to sort of say, hey, consider Hinesburg. You know, we had a job opening, and we got a great team, and, you know, maybe something, I don't know, that Missy might be willing to do and take a nice picture or something. So I don't know who tends to be the Facebook poster. Is that you, Aaron? Exclusively?
I
So
would
that
love
might
to
be,
have
you
somebody
know,
else.
it'd be nice if we could get 2 or 3 little posts in there.
Yes, we can work on that.
That could give that positive
Yep.
piece. All right, so that's,
Link our own Facebook pages to it too, right?
Correct, share
We
it.
can friend it, whatever, share it.
Yep.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So that's out there to look. And I also actually wanted to communicate that this, even though the title is changed, it's really, we're not adding a new position. There has been 2 full-time positions, so it's just changing the title that I had previously to sort of right-size the position. So it's not the town adding a new position, it's just changing the title. Second thing, and just an update from the windstorm that we had, I think the last people that were without power came back on yesterday. Wow. Yeah. So, actually not far from me. I know Barbara 4-Hour, who had posted on Front Porch Forum.
She's not
Yeah,
far from you, right?
Yeah, yep. So, anyway, I think everybody is back in service, but there's still cleanup to do. I mean, that was an amazing storm, and just the damage. And, fortunately, I think what Charlie referenced, we didn't have the road damage, but it was just the trees, and a lot of large trees. And so there's ongoing work with our highway department, and they're having to have other contractors come in and help with some of the bigger pieces. But what I wanted to say is just, the hard work. We had only 2 people in the highway department during that storm. And we were very fortunate to have our volunteer fire department help out, and they really stood up to the plate and came, and they were working alongside Mike and Tom. And, Mike said many times they couldn't have done it without their help. So they were out there not only helping our road crew, but, helping other residents too. So certainly a big thanks to all of the work that both the highway department and our fire department put forth throughout the storm.
Yeah, I mean, for those like myself that was only out of power for a short period of time, it makes you stop and realize when 3 days into it, there's a post from the fire department and the library saying, we have power, come charge your phones, come warm up, and the fire department saying, here are the services we can provide you if you need that. That's very helpful. So,
There's one thing that this just brings to mind is that I had a resident stop and ask me about when hurricane season. She said, "How do I know where to go if we need to go to shelter?" And she does not have email or any computer. So I think we really do need to remember that there are people who are not connected. Right. And so either making this or putting things in the newspapers, right. So people know about the fire station, where you would go if you needed to go someplace. Is it the fire station? Is it CVU? Is that where the Red Cross would set up? So we just need to remember that not everybody's going to be looking at their computer.
Co-op was prompting people to dial 211 if you needed information. If you need to evacuate, call 211 and they will let you know where you need to go.
Yeah. So we need to advertise that in ways.
Absolutely. And I can talk to Al about that because he's our emergency management director, and we have our local emergency operations plan, but that might be good information.
Exact question during the time, and Al and himself and many from his crew went door to door. They were actually doing welfare checks throughout that whole process because I asked that same question.
But this is not even in an emergency. Just remembering when we're trying to notify people about things that are happening in town is to not just rely on
those type of
Yes, ma'am.
Does Vermont Alert do telephone? Does
Yes.
it do robocalls?
Yep, so depending on what people sign up for, they can get those alert messages through their email, through cell phone, through text message, through landline, whatever they provide.
Good, so
Yeah.
that's something we could fall back on if we had to.
Right, yep.
Do you want to do the other 2 items in the health order status?
So the status of the health order, our town health officer has drafted a health order and has all the documents that he needs. The attorney is now reviewing them to make sure we have everything we need. And so I suspect we may either have to have a special meeting or have that on an agenda and have you guys become the Board of Health at the next meeting. But it may in fact need a special meeting just to get it going. So I'll get more updates on that.
And then the budget?
And so the budget process, I've been meeting with department heads and just kind of getting an idea of where they're at and if there are any big changes that they're anticipating. Their budgets are due to me at the end of next week. And then we've got, trying to think, November 30th through December 7th.
Right, so the process, we're all going to get involved, and so everybody has their list. And I'll admit, I haven't contacted folks yet, but so in the next week and a half or so, those department managers and committees should be forwarding their input to Renee. And at this point, Renee is planning to schedule meetings with all the departments from Thursday, November 30th to December 7th. And those would be meetings primarily during the day that, we'll all have to try to fit into. And I don't know if you want the select board to email you, like, these are the best days, and she could try to, but I did tell Renee she needs to schedule with the department people and then let the select board member know, and we have to try to fit it in.
Yeah.
And, obviously, if you can talk directly with Renee if you want to change it a little bit.
Right.
But we're sitting on the side. We're a side note to the process. We want to be part of the process, but, Renee's got to move forward with the departments, regardless of whether it fits in our schedule or not, in a way.
And
So-
within that November 30th to December 7th timeframe, I want to get them on the earlier end of that, because then we have it on the schedule as it is right now is December 11th, that we'd be presenting the select board with the overall budget presentation and capital budget. So that's why I'd really like to get those,
into the
there's,
spreadsheet at that point.
right.
So that'll be
So
our
there's one.
first meeting, the 11th, with, the full budget. And I think the conversations, we want to have with the departments we're coordinating with or trying to guide and learn is, what are the, what's out of the ordinary in their budget this year? Are there any big increases or decreases or changes that are happening? So those would be the conversations I'd be looking to have.
Yeah. So for the line items that are staying the same, those are easy. But if there's, significant increases or decreases, that's important information for us to know.
And I think, correct me if I'm wrong, we looked at the December calendar, and it looks like maybe those first 3 weeks we might meet in December. I think it's
Christmas is a Monday.
yeah, Christmas is a Monday. That's right. So
Right.
it
And you
won't-
don't
we
want to
won't
eat,
do it
you
on
guys don't want to
Christmas.
meet on Christmas?
So those first 3 weeks beforehand, we would plan to meet, and hopefully not meet the last month. That would be New Year's Eve, so, right? So that's not going to happen. So those would be I think we should,
Like the last Monday in November?
It's the,
well, today's the
Let me
what,
just look at
4th?
what the
So
schedule is
it'd be
here.
the 18th we'd meet, right? Would be in 2 weeks from now.
Right.
so
Are there
November
5
20th is our
Mondays?
next scheduled meeting.
Is it 20th?
Yeah, the
Okay.
20th is the next scheduled meeting. So, if we want to add any additional meetings, we need to be thinking about that, and then also let VCAM know, too, so that they can plan.
So Monday, the 27th?
Monday, the 20th is our next regular scheduled
Right,
meeting. The
but
27th is
Should we plan to meet on the 27th, or that's really not going to help us with budget, but,
The budget.
Yeah,
And
okay.
Renee and I briefly talked and said that first meeting in December, we try to do a lot of the normal business.
Right.
So then the next meeting and hopefully the meeting after that, we kind of just focus on budget stuff.
So I think that's why we were looking at maybe adding a meeting on Monday, December 4th, potentially just to get regular business taken care of.
Yeah, because it seems like if we could get stuff done on the 27th, regular stuff, but whatever,
Yeah.
because we won't have as many Mondays because Christmas is on
Right.
Monday.
Right, that's true,
right.
yeah. So we need to look at
Are
that.
we meeting then on December 11th and December 18th?
We're talking about
Yeah.
doing all 3 of those Mondays.
Yep.
Okay. I want to make sure that I
Yeah, I mean,
don't
we always
fly
mean
off.
pretty much every Monday in December.
And then in
season.
January, we can sort of plan on 3
Plan on-
meetings in January.
Because the first
probably.
Monday falls on
And then
January
having to sign the
1st.
warrants
Yeah,
at
so
the
it won't be
end.
the first.
Right. So it'd be the 8th, 15th, 22nd, and potentially the 29th if we needed to.
We'll have to sign it, right?
Yeah. So, and I've talked a little bit with Renee about, I'm not sure if anybody on the select board has either some time or whatnot. I mean, I think this is a good time to see how we can help Renee through that budget process. So I'm sort of looking at my schedule and seeing, how can I be a help in this? So if anybody else would like to, particularly in December, as it all comes together, and not only does it all have to come together, but then it has to be a working sort of document as we go through the process. If anybody, wants to, then, contact Renee, and Renee and I will be talking going forward, at least for the next, 6 weeks.
Yeah. And for me, even if you're not feeling like you can do the spreadsheet piece of it, just to have someone to kind of run things by for me is going to be really helpful. So,
Review the paper, here it is.
Yeah.
Oh, wait, this is confusing, or
Right.
this doesn't
Yeah.
make sense, so.
yeah,
Rather than bring it to the meeting and have those conversations.
yeah.
So,
It'd be one thing if I had this budget was the only thing I needed to focus on, but I've got quite a few things in the fire right now, so I would appreciate just
really
having
gonna be a
someone
group
to,
effort
yeah, group
to
effort. This is
work.
definitely a team. So, and I'm fully very supportive of help and
where
on
are the
this.
documents kept now? Are they kept in box? Dropbox?
in Dropbox.
So as you're building these, are they
They're
kept-
not, but they certainly could be.
They could be.
Yeah, yeah,
Because
absolutely.
then, not only would people have access to them, but then there's a backup,
Right,
rather than just on your
yeah,
drive,
right, yep.
so
I
that
mean,
might be.
I have multiple copies, so I have a copy that I'm just kind of playing around with, but but then I have the regular master too, so, but yeah, I
We
mean,
can talk about that, yeah.
yep.
Anything else from the town administrator report? Or any questions for Renee?
Well, I think it's important to say that we had the first project meeting.
Yes, yep,
okay.
Yeah, and the contract was awarded
This is for the town highway garage?
for the highway garage.
Yep.
Yep, to Russell.
Russell Construction Services, yep.
Why don't you tell?
Yeah.
just-
So, yep, Andrea's right. We did have our first pre-construction meeting. And so we had representatives from Russell Construction that were there. Steve Smith from Smith Alvarez was there. Andrea was there. And Mike Anthony and myself, so representing the project team that's worked on this. And we've kind of discussed what the steps are moving forward. We have a sort of a draft schedule moving forward. And we will be having, once construction starts, we'll be having regular weekly meetings, construction meetings on site. And I do have, for the stormwater piece, we have a proposal from our stormwater consultant that we've been working with all along to just provide that on-site oversight on a part-time basis. And so that's, something I talked to Steve Smith with, and he fully recommends it. I mean,
Is that a normal thing that's required now for this kind of a project, or is it
Stormwater?
something? Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
As part of the
Yes.
stormwater permit, during the construction, some oversight.
Yep, and there's also pieces at the end that will need documentation and stuff. So she will be an invaluable resource to the project, and she's been very good to work with, so.
And I don't think, I'm not sure if it was discussed, at least at the select board meeting, but all the bids came in, and maybe you might just describe, how they came in, and
Yeah. So we had, think we were, during this process, we were kind of looking at sometimes in the spring bid, that's where you're going to see your best, your best outcome. Everything was leaning towards fall, and so that's where we kind of realigned and tried to really get everything ready for the fall bidding. And it turned out to be very successful. So all of our bids came in within budget, even the highest bid that came in, and it showed that our cost estimator did a really good job because all of the bids came in with a pretty close, pretty tight.
Very tight.
Yeah.
I can't remember.
There were actually even two that were identical to the dollar, which never happens. So, our cost estimator, Tom Barden, did an excellent job in that piece of it. So we awarded the bid to the low bidder, which was, like we said, Russell Construction Services.
I'm not familiar with them. Where are they from? And
They're based out of Rutland.
okay.
Yeah, but they also did the Starksboro Town Garage, and so that's been a model that we've been looking at throughout this process. So they had a very good experience with them. So
Yeah, there'll be a project foreman is there every day. Then there's the project manager. He comes to the weekly meetings.
right,
And then the
and their
estimator,
estimator.
who they're all going to blame for everything.
Yes, yes,
put the
we got
bid
that
in.
out of them.
Are they fairly large, or will they have subs for electrical and all that?
They will have subs, but they're also a large enough firm that they can self-perform if necessary. So, yeah. So, but they, that was also part of it. Is the subcontractors were very hungry for this project, so they got good pricing because of that as well.
And so they're getting ready to start, and will they really be able to go right through the winter?
Yep, they're hoping that they're going to put the foundation in. They may not pour the slab until after they've got the structure up and the roof on, so that, because we can't count on this weather. But they're going to put the footings in and the foundation, and there's some materials that need to be ordered, so they wanted to get those specs in.
Some of the steel.
The steel that, there's a, couple weeks or month time delay, but they seemed right on top of it, and
Great.
Yeah, it was a
Good.
good meeting.
Is the site work done already?
no, that's the first, the preliminary site work. Mike did a lot of that, but the first thing will be getting the site subcontractor in to do that.
Yeah.
And they're going to, they're going to have a job trailer there.
Right.
And get all that stuff.
Yeah. So the job trailer may arrive as early as, is it this week?
This week,
This
maybe,
week,
yeah.
yeah. So,
And I think, as we've said, or has been, I think, finally communicated somewhat clearly, is that CSWD, the drop-off center, will close earlier than we had hoped. They're actually going to close, I think, the 2nd of December. We had, the town had made
We made
plans to have them stay as long as possible. But in the end, they chose the best thing would be for them to move out. They're still planning to come back. They've got a site space at least equivalent to what they already have, designed in the site plan. They would have to, and they said that they need to really look at everything they're doing around in their waste district and what services they're providing everywhere, and then take a look at the site to decide what services they'll be able to provide and what they should provide for the Hinesburg drop-off center. And their plan is to make those plans and design it into the site, and once construction is completed, they should be able to be moving back, and that's their intention at this point. So it will be some time. There is some disruption. We totally get that. They have provided some information of where people can go in the interim, or if they choose, they can hire a service in the interim until they return.
I think we understand that it's a pretty big inconvenience for a lot of people. It's not only, it's a cost factor for people to have to drive extra. And it's unfortunate that they weren't able to take us up on the phasing that
Right.
we were proposing.
Yeah, I think that's the important piece, that to clear up the confusion, that it certainly wasn't the town's decision to have them leave. We did a lot of steps to try to accommodate them, to keep them here. So, but
Yeah,
at
to
the
keep
end of
them
the
here
day.
during construction.
During construction, yeah.
And that the site plan is based on them being here. There's, certainly elements in the design that, the size of the transformer, where conduit's being placed, and all of the kind of site work is being
In
done.
anticipation of them moving in.
anticipation of them.
Right.
All right, is there any other questions for Renee? I think the next item is Select Board Forum. Does anybody have anything in particular? Seems like I'm doing a lot of talking.
Were you going to update on the vestry, Phil?
Oh, yeah, okay, so I think the question came up about the vestry, and it's literally blowing down. Maybe 9 months ago or a year, there was some discussion here at the Select Board, okay, who owns the vestry? And I think at that point, the United Church, and I'll disclose, I'm a member of that church, was like, well, we think we've sort of given it to the town, and there's certainly some paperwork about the town renting it for, I don't know, $1 for 50 years or something. And so we were sort of moving down that path. But since then, we've had some legal work done, and while it's still not 100% clear, it doesn't look like the town ever actually kind of took it over, although they used it for a while, along with the Boy Scouts and whatnot, but he seemed to use it for storage. That now maybe it is back into the church's hands. At this point, it's still not 100% clear. There are some, it's back in the 1850s or 60s where this document is, and it's been given to the church as long as the grass grows and the sun comes up, kind of a thing. And potentially where it came from too, there's a possibility it could go back into ownership of the original, the family that donated it. So that's still a little unclear. I think now the church is looking at really sort of two options. And we're open to a number of options, but now it's become somewhat of a liability. And so really two options. It looks like we're going to move forward and do a survey of the building to see if there's asbestos or anything like that associated with it. We've had a proposal to demolish it, to take it down. It's quite pricey. And I think the church... And I think the church might come to the town and say, hey, maybe you might, look at helping us do this, because the town used it for such a long time. Yeah, after windstorm. And the other thing is, and we've had just some preliminary discussions with Alex, is like, is it an actual buildable? Could that building be turned into a little tiny home? I don't know. It's not obvious that the answer is absolutely yes, but it's not 100% the answer is no either. So I think that the church would be looking at, we want to do something with it. So, what are the options, I think. And I imagine in the next 4 to 8 weeks, we'll have at least clarified the title information, and we'll clarify whether it actually is a building that could it be, I'll say, restored and turned into a little, small little home, or is that totally out of the picture? And so that leaves less options out there. And I expect...
But this is, you are speaking as the church, not as a...
That's right.
Yeah.
I'm just
So
saying,
this is really not
I know,
town-
what the church is looking at right now, and just being totally honest, this is what the church is looking at. And I will say, and it wasn't me, but it was, a couple members of the church saying, well, since the town kind of had the building for a long time, maybe they could help with that. So Anyways, that's where it is.
Well, I appreciate the update because I noticed the tin on the ground
Yeah,
again.
yeah.
And the liability issue for me is, kind of paramount at this point.
Yep.
Because if the town does own it,
Yeah,
Or
I'm going to
control it.
say no right now.
Right.
But at the same time, and that's why it's become a hot topic for the church. It's
Yeah.
like, wait a minute here, if we, because we're kind of saying, well, we really don't own it. Well, if we really do, now we're liable. It hasn't been insured. I shouldn't say that out loud, but it hasn't been any of, we have insurance for all of our buildings, but that's not one we've insured. So.
And it never was on the town's insurance?
It
was on the
for-
town's
because we had-
insurance.
Because we had the things that we
department.
stored in it. So the storage, there was a value on what was in there.
I know that, we've got a couple preliminary, just to get a rough idea on demolition. I will say that the one that I saw, I'm not really involved in it that closely, but the one I did see, they talked about preserving that one window. So there's that one window that came from the Baptist church, which was where the Masons are, so. So I think we'll have more, bring the question up again. I'll sort of fill people in, and maybe we can actually have the church come and present what their plans are. So that's a good question. Anything else from Select Board? Marilee?
Would this be the time to wonder if we want to post anything on Front Porch Forum? And so I wonder the contract that was just solidified, would that be for the town garage? Is that something we would like to post on Front Porch Forum?
Yeah, maybe. Yeah,
Yeah, I thought
that's a good idea.
good news.
The contractor, the bids have been opened, they're, matched our expected budget, and the contractor selected.
Yep.
And,
We didn't plan a groundbreaking ceremony.
nothing like that, huh? No golden shovel?
No, but we'll have a ribbon cutting when we,
We got
the
nothing
real
else.
celebration.
Why are we on the select board if we don't get the golden shovel, right? Didn't we do that? Oh, for the police station, I think there was one, yeah.
We do plan to have a grand finale holiday party at the existing garage. For one last hurrah.
Oh,
this year,
yeah.
So,
That'll be, let's say that.
I don't know if anybody's been to the holiday party at the town garage.
right.
Yeah, it has a reputation, huh?
They're the best.
So keep us informed on that.
Okay.
I think everybody from the town should go, but maybe not Chief Cost, huh?
to expand on what Mary Lee said, I would put something in there regarding the water agreement, potential agreement.
Yeah, no, I was thinking of that.
Yeah.
That might be something that would be, yeah, so if someone wants to help me, or I'll, write something up and just, you do, okay, good. Oh, good.
Do we want to wait on that until it's
Yeah, until
solidified
it's
with the
done.
attorney?
Yeah.
Not saying that it's
Done.
done, just saying that
putting it
we're
out there.
talking about it.
I think it's,
It will be an upcoming agenda item. You don't want to,
Well, I defer to Renee.
yeah, I think, going into this, I really wanted this to feel like it was an open conversation, and I think it will be better received by the public if they feel like there's been a collaborative process through this. So I think what Tom's suggesting is just to get that out there, that this is going to be at an upcoming meeting, and I think there's certainly value to that, sort of the same reasoning why it prompted me to remember that I needed to post on Front Porch Forum the agenda, because just for that specific item, just so that people aren't feeling like we just all of a sudden brought this here. And even though you guys are going to talk about it in 2 meetings at least, it's important to have it out there.
The fact the town's exploring a possibility of adding an additional well to increase the capacity of our water. Yeah, so.
I think also the good news that the water leak at Green Street, and it was before the meter, so there was really no way anybody could have known about it. But that it is panning out that was the leak. So,
There were other, smaller ones, but that was the big one that we were looking for.
I'd like to explore options about how we can get those meters where we can
They're useful.
fill the gap in between town lines and private lines. Or we'll never have the opportunity to find them.
I know, but it's like you,
There may be another way to do it. I mean, and maybe, we should have Eric here, but perhaps in the way, we put a block here so we can do more isolation. That costs a little money, but in the end, I think it'll probably be worthwhile. It may be possible to sort of meter a couple of spots. So, if you're sort of monitoring X amount going, north or south, and then all of a sudden it increases by 35%, then you say, well, that's probably where.
Go to that direction.
Yeah, right. So,
Yeah.
anyways.
And I think during the process of working with that, the group from North Carolina, there was some equipment that they had that they are seeing that could be really helpful to have. So they're kind of looking at,
This is be ongoing, because, it's aging and.
yeah.
Right,
Right.
right.
and the one up
And
at
the one
Thistle
up in
Hill was
Thistle
a
Hill
new
too,
line.
so. All right. Yeah. Any, go ahead, yeah.
Mark your calendars.
Oh, boy.
Oh, I think I saw this. Yeah.
Is there ever? Quadra, I forget which year, Quadra and the Growlers are back, January 5th, Friday night, at the Old Lantern,
Isn't it 2018?
2018.
Good.
No, I'm not which year, which number of years we've done it. I forget. I think this is the 5th. I'm not 100% sure, but look for more information. And the Recreation Commission and myself and the group that I've been working with is looking for new blood to come in, because a lot of the people who I've been working with, actually their kids are kind of aging out of
Yeah,
the recreation
Right.
scene. So we're looking for new help. So if you want to help, reach out to me and
But again, this
More
is
than willing.
specifically for the recreation, for the Bissonnet Fields.
still for the fields. Yep. It'd be kind of a celebration this year because it's actually going to come to fruition.
Right, right. Okay. Anything else from Select Board Forum? Next item on the agenda is reviewing the minutes from October 16th. They were in our packet.
I'll move to approve the minutes from October 16th.
Were there any corrections or comments? I looked them over, they seemed pretty good. Are we ready for the motion then? All those in favor of approving the minutes from October 16th, say aye. Aye, and so, any opposed? None opposed, the motion passed. And we have the warrants. So if there's a motion to approve the warrants,
I'll make a motion to approve the warrants there in your hand for last week.
any comments? All those in favor of approving the warrants from last week, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, none opposed, so the motion passed. And last, we potentially may go into executive session whose purpose is to discuss, I think, ongoing negotiations with our union for the union contract. We have 5 employees in the union.
Yeah, there's 5 currently.
Right.
There's 6
So,
spots.
Utilities and the highway.
Utilities and highway.
And highway. So the reason to go in executive session is this is an ongoing negotiation that affects personnel and the town budget. It's a contract. Any discussion on that? We would, so we would go into executive session. We'll close the meeting, the broadcast section of the meeting. If there are any motions done in executive session, which at this point I wouldn't expect any, this is just an informational only, we would come back out and those motions would be in our minutes. So we would end the broadcast at this point, I think. So I need a motion to go into executive session.
I move the select board go into executive session to discuss union negotiations and would place the town at a substantial disadvantage because the select board risks disclosing its negotiation strategy if discussions or proposed contract terms in public.
And we would include
And we
Renee
include
in,
Renee,
so it's
yep.
the select board members and Renee. Any other discussion? Does that sound correct to you? All right, all those in favor of moving to executive session, say aye. 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 Any opposed? So there's none opposed. So we will close this part of the meeting and move to executive session. Yes, Val?